Why? According to Buddhistic teaching, there are two worlds, so to speak, the one ruled by the law of causality, the other over which the law of causality has no power. A Buddhist would say that the man who applies to the strictly unconditioned predicates such as being and non-being, which are used properly enough of the finite, the conditioned, resembles one who attempts to count the sands of the Ganges or the drops of the ocean. With much the same sort of reasoning, Jesus referred to the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven when addressing those who had eyes and did not see, and ears and did not hear. In view of the apparent fact that the human body has reached its utmost limits of development, as a physical organism, there seems to be a thinkable probability that it will eventually, by a devolutionary process and by the atrophy of its present clumsy and imperfect organs, return, step by step, during the gradual cooling of this planet, to the condition of the psychic life of a simple cellule, and ultimately to the unconditioned. Back, as Huxley puts it, to the indefinable latency from which we arose. Or, as Carlyle expresses it, pass stormfully across the astonished earth from God and to God. Starting from the simple cellule, we see, in a way, how, Tanner, or the desire to extend the scope of activities, has persistently striven in this direction until the ultimate possibilities of the development of physical organism have been reached in man. This highly differentiated organism has become more and more sensitive to pain, more and more dissatisfied with its limitations. And man, recognizing these limitations, desires to abandon them altogether. Consequently, he seeks refuge in the hope of a future life, where limitations will no longer curb and embarrass him, and where he will cease to be subject to pain, passion, and sorrow. Jesus and Gautama have indicated how by the suppression of this tanha, how by detachment from the things of the world, we can approach that simple cellular life stage which is on the road to heaven, nirvana, and the unconditioned. It is easy to realize how much pleasanter it would have been for us all if the simple cellule from which we spring had not been so persistently ambitious in the direction of activities. Its relatively prescribed functions suggest a most desirable condition of peace compared to that unrest which men must call delight. Human life is but a drop in the ocean of organic existences on this planet, about 1,500 millions only among countless myriads of beings. It cannot, then, be accounted strange in a world containing so great a variety of organisms, with the varying tastes and needs, that man should find much that is distasteful and unsuitable to him which is pleasant and acceptable to other beings. The vulture feasts on carrion loathsome to man. Man partakes of food at which a rhinoceros would shudder. Morality, as a law and corollary of organized life, being confined to humanity, it follows that immorality, as subversive of this law, would be of necessity abhorrent to those who appreciate a law without which social life would become intolerable, and not worth living. But, when we come to consider why it should be that the exquisite process of the decomposition of flesh should be less pleasing to the senses than the formation and fading of a sunset, we are forced to the conclusion that the world was not made for man, but man for the world. The part, working indiscriminately with and for the whole, is an ethical law observable throughout the universe. All individuals are, unconsciously for the most part, carrying into effect the will of God by the will of God. We speak about individual effort to attain this perfection or avoid that evil, because we cannot divest ourselves of the feeling of free will. To speak and act under a sense of free will is forced upon us by the delusion of separateness. It is often the case that God is only recognized in the beautiful aspects of nature. St. Paul says, "There are diversities of operations, but it is the same God that worketh all in all." We have to see God, not only in the sweet waters, but also in the deadly swamp. In the healthy child as well as in the fetid diseases of the sick. That art thou. As the Buddhist truly says. The delicious and the disgusting are equally necessary as factors in the scheme of the universe. There is in both the same cosmic law fulfilling itself. Dragons and all deeps. Fire and hail fulfilling his word. A difference only exists in the appreciation of them. This monistic view of nature in no respect stands in the way of our regarding God as the sublimated reality of an ideal existence. Dr. Paul Carus, in his booklet on the idea of God, says, "If the idea of God is an empty dream which we must expel from our minds, why not expel all ideas and all ideals? They are just as much and just as little real." From this point of view, a denial of the existence of God would, with consistency, lead us also to a denial of an integral, or a logarithm, or a differential. An integral is just as little a concrete object as is God. And the idea of God is just as important in the real life of human activity, human thought and emotion, as the idea of honesty is in the mercantile world, that of courage among warriors, and that of faith in science. Buddha has taught that there are worlds more perfect and developed, and others less so, than this earth. And that the inhabitants of each world correspond in development with itself. Mr. Lafcadio Hearn says, "The Buddhist denial of the reality of the apparitional world is not a denial of the reality of phenomena as phenomena, nor a denial of the forces producing phenomena objectively and subjectively. The true declaration is that what we perceive is never reality in itself, and that even the ego that perceives is an unstable plexus of feelings which are themselves unstable, and in the nature of illusions." This position is scientifically strong, perhaps impregnable. Indian philosophers have attempted, with a fair measure of success, to overcome the perplexity presented by the idea of diversity and unity. They say that, as an individual can conjure up visions of various phenomena in his waking state without destroying his sense of unity as an individual, so there may be a multiform creation in the one absolute without any suppression of its unitary nature. To the unconscious absolute phenomena stand in the relation of dreams to the individual who is conscious of dreams on awaking. But the unconscious absolute does not awake. Therefore, it remains unconscious of phenomena. The variety of the world is like the variety of a dream. In a commentary on the essence of the Upanishads, the fictitiousness of emanations from unity is thus illustrated. A belated wayfarer mistakes a piece of rope lying on the road for a snake. The delusion disappears, but the rope remains the rope. So with the apparitional world. The delusion passes, and unity remains. AA. All the figments of the world fiction may be made to disappear in such a way that pure thought, or the self, shall alone remain, in the same manner as the fictitious serpent seen in a piece of rope may be made to disappear, and the rope that underlies it may be made to remain. The rope was only the rope all the time it falsely seemed to be a snake. The fictitious world may be made to disappear as the fictitious snake is made to disappear, and this is its sublation. A.B. Professor Seth, referring in his book, entitled The Position of Man in the Cosmos, to Mr. Bradley's Appearance and Reality, remarks, "Reality must own, and somehow include appearance." In another part of his book he writes, "We are ourselves immersed in the process of the universe. We can only live our own life, and see through our own eyes. If we could do more, that would mean that we ourselves had vanished from the universe. The place which had known us would know us no more. And there would be, as it were, a gap created in the tissue of the world." Under Mysticism. In the Encyclopaedia Britannica, we read, "Our consciousness of self is the condition under which we possess a world to know and to enjoy. But it likewise isolates us from all the world beside. Reason is the revealer of nature and God. But, by its acts, reason seems the thing reasoned about." Hence mysticism demands a faculty above reason, by which the subject shall be placed in immediate and complete union with the object of his desire, a union in which the consciousness of self has disappeared, and in which, therefore, subject and object are one. The great self, or immanent power, expressions barely communicable to the understanding by the rather restrictive sounding and abrupt terminology of the word God. Perhaps nearer in thought to the will in nature of Schopenhauer, with which the Brahmins of India sought communion, has been to them from time immemorial the alpha and omega of the being. When religion steps in, it is a frame of mind, not a set of opinions. They cannot in truth be called superstitious. They are, to coin a word, substitious. They sink, plummet-wise, into the fathomless. The line is severed, and they are lost in the depths and caverns of nescience. The concrete, with them, has always ranked lower than the abstract. Vamadeo Shastri, writing in the Fortnightly Review of November, 1898, on the theological situation in India, says, "In Europe, as I understand, your churches have long ago closed the era of unlimited metaphysical speculation, retaining only certain mysterious dogmata that are authoritatively prescribed as facts, that are not philosophical discoveries, but are declarations of revealed truth. You have drawn up your creeds. You have settled finally all essential beliefs in future rewards and punishments, in man's redemption from sin and resurrection, and, above all, in a divine personality. You have numbered and ended the list of your sacred books. You look for no fresh revelation. You have regulated by ordinances the rites and ceremonies which unite the worshippers and divide the churches. But I want you to understand that we are still wandering in the metaphysic wilderness, and that Christianity, returning at last after an interval of so many centuries, finds us still engaged on the same problems as those which occupied the schools of Antioch and Alexandria and the secret professors of the Jewish Kabbalah. We have never yet set limits, either by philosophic criticism or by ecclesiastic ordinance, to the range of free inquiry or to the thinking faculty. We cannot submit to the restrictions placed by faith upon inquiry into mysteries. We are driven by our mental constitution to overleap the bounds of sentient experience, and to construct, like your ancient heretics, some intelligible theory of the unconditioned. We are incapable of apprehending a personality, except in the sense of something that masks or represents an incomprehensible notion. And dogmatic systems are to us no more than the formal envelopes of spiritual truth. Two cardinal ideas run through our deeper religious thought. One is the Maya, or cosmic illusion, which cuts the knot of any difficulty touching the relation between spirit and matter, and produces unity by exhibiting the visible universe as a shadow projected upon the white radiance of eternity. The other is the notion of the soul's deliverance by long travail from existence in any stage or shape. In short, we have a religion, but no theology. By Plotinus, the One is explicitly exalted above the nu omicron sigma and the ideas. It transcends existence altogether, and is not cognizable by reason. Remaining itself in repose, it rays out, as it were, from its fullness an image of itself, which is called nu omicron sigma, and which constitutes the system of ideas, or the intelligible world. The soul is in turn the image or product of the nu omicron sigma, and the soul, by its motion, begets corporeal matter. The soul thus faces two ways, towards the nu omicron sigma, from which it springs, and towards the material life, which is its own product. Vide Encyclopaedia Britannica. A consideration of the theosophy of the Sohar, or Book of Splendor, does not afford a key to the solution of this problem. We meet there with the same difficulty, the inconceivable transition point, where the inactive mingles with the active. Ensif is the absolute, the great, I am. The endless, the boundless, the incomprehensible. Mr. Bradley, in his book on Appearance and Reality, asks whether we really have a positive idea of an absolute defined as one comprehensive sentience. And he answers that, while we cannot fully realize its existence, its main features are drawn from our own experience, and we have also a suggestion there of the unity of a whole embracing distinctions within itself. Identity only exists through differences, unity through multiplicity. Such is the constant thesis of the Hegelian philosophy. A.C. The apparent connection between the Buddhist and Christian conceptions of a God is very ably stated by Dr. Paul Carus, and with the following extracts from his writings I may fitly close the subject of this chapter. Buddhism is commonly said to deny the existence of a God. This is true, or not true, according to the definition of God. While Buddhists do not believe that God is an individual being like ourselves, they recognize that the Christian God idea contains an important truth which, however, is differently expressed in Buddhism. Buddhism teaches that Bodhi, or Sambodhi, or Amitabha, i.e., that which gives enlightenment, or, in other words, those verities the recognition of which is nirvana, constituting Buddhahood, is omnipresent and eternal. Christianity possesses in the idea, and, indeed, in the very word God, representing the authority of moral conduct in a most forcible manner, a symbol of invaluable importance. It is an advantage which has contributed not a little to make Christianity so powerful and popular, so impressive and effective, as it has proved to be. In this little word God, much has been condensed, and it contains an unfathomable depth of religious comfort. Chapter 3. Soul, Self, Individuality, and Karma. Verily every man is altogether vanity. For man walketh in a vain show, he disquieteth himself in vain. Bible. The feat of mental gymnastics performed by Gautama regarded as a phenomenal being, which led to the abrogation of soul as an ego entity from its dominion in the minds of men, combined with the amazing fact that nearly a third of the population of this planet has, for many centuries, enthusiastically acquiesced in this dethronement of animism, must be regarded as one of the most striking wonders in the religious history of the human race. As astronomical science disposed of the geocentric theory of the universe, greatly to the advantage of theological progressiveness, so the exponents of modern psychology hope to dispel the delusion of the egocentric theory of man, and to clear the way for a more scientific and a truer conception of that which is commonly understood by the word soul. According to the teaching of these psychologists, there is no ego entity, or hidden and mysterious factor, that stands behind the psychic and physical organism of man. The soul of man consists of a group of ideas, and these ideas are in intimate connection with the so-called external world, as also with what may be expressed as the internal world of a being wherein has taken place the development of the hereditary germ. In Buddhism it appears to me to be a matter of choice whether we apply the term soul to a group of ideas, which, in the case of the saint, as sublimated ideas, synchronously cease with the formative faculty, and vanish ultimately into the unconditioned, or to the effects of a man's disposition, which continue as impressions on the characters of those who receive them. Man is a name for a materialized presentation of reality, that is, for particles of matter assuming form under the influence of a formative faculty and the results of the interactions, relations, and qualities peculiar to the particles and this particular aggregation. On the occurrence of what is known as death, the components of the body are no longer held together, as it were, by the formative faculty, and the body loses its vitality. But, in the ordinary course of things, of form there remains this formulative faculty, or impulse to recombine. Form is destructible, yet it remains form, in the sense that it has within it the power to renew form. The most important factor in the formation of man is not the material particles that make up his body, but form. This form is a reality, but not a materiality. If the interaction of the component parts, under the influence of externalities, ceases to work towards the preservation of the formative faculty, a recombining influence, a material presentation of form, will not re-ensue, and the discontinuance of the formative element is reality, truth, nirvana, God. If the desire to describe a triangle on paper does not exist, the materialized presentation of a real axiomatic triangle will not be formed, while the perfect triangle still remains a reality. In this case, under certain influences, the formative faculty has been subdued, and the consequence is that the material form of the triangle, in its necessary imperfection, has not been produced. The perfect triangle is the undescribed triangle. Should bubbles on the surface of the ocean be deprived of this formative faculty which made them as they are, the power to resume the shape after dissolution would be gone forever. But if the faculty to reform remained, they would again crop up on the surface of the sea, the formative faculty making use of the materials at hand under the influences of form. Analogously, the saint, according to Buddhism, who is rid of the formative faculty, does not re-exist as a phenomenal being. It might be objected that to make use of the expression formative faculty is only to revert to the doctrine of essences and faculties as principles of explanation, and to rely on the exploded superstition of a priorism. But this is not the case. The formative faculty is a quality of form, and form is an experience. The intangible and manifest, such as form, can as reasonably be credited with qualities as the tangible and material. The soul is a special form of life, as the flame is a special form of motion. It is also a product of life, and life is the arrangement and rearrangement of matter, subject to form, with which are associated the qualities of matter and the relations and interactions of these qualities. Gautama. Dr. Paul Carus remarks, strange to say, anticipated the modern conception of the soul as it is now taught by the most advanced scientists of Europe. St. Paul, too, may be reckoned as one who, if he had lived in these days, would have given his support to that positive philosophy which regards the soul as a product of materiality. For, he says, howbeit that was not first which was spiritual, but that which was natural, and afterwards that which is spiritual. The first man is of the earth earthy. The second man, the soul, is the Lord from heaven. When the distinction between the expressions materiality and reality is clearly discerned, it removes a difficulty out of our way when we come to consider a means of bringing into harmony the Christian and Buddhist conception of soul. It has been contended that, if you deny substance to the soul, it is tantamount to asserting the non-existence of the soul. But if it is admitted that reality has existence as well as materiality, this objection falls to the ground. The definition of matter as that which occupies space is not a comprehensive one. It is only the definition of a supposed quality of matter. It is abstracted in our minds from other qualities. Therefore, if we regard soul, more especially in its sublimated condition, as something akin to a quality of matter after matter, as we perceive it, has been abstracted, we have a residuum which both Christians and Buddhists alike can accept as an approximate explanation of the nature of soul. The eschatology of the soul, as indicated in the two systems, is less easy to harmonize. The soul, according to Catholic notions, after the death of the body, undergoes a purgatorial process. And, in the general view of Protestants, awaits, sleeping awaking, in the ante-room of a judgment hall until a final verdict is pronounced on the day of doom. And then, and not till then, is it allotted its ultimate rest or unrest. On the other hand, that which is in Buddhistic thought the counterpart of this soul, whether we call it a group of ideas or the effects of karma, must submit, till absolutely bereft of the formative faculty, a desire to live to continuous incarnations. This, however, does not involve a process of transmigration, as is sometimes incorrectly assumed. Several illustrations have been made use of to explain the migrationless nature of the process. When a lamp is lit at a burning lamp, there is a kindling of the wick, but no transmigration of the flame. A thought is conveyed by words from one to another, but of the thought itself there is no migration. Neither is there migration of any part of an object to a photographic plate, nor in the reflection of an object in a mirror. It is matter for speculation whether the Christian idea of tarriance in an ante-room, and more especially the purgatorial process, might not be strained in meaning so as to imply that reincarnation on this planet is the fate of some souls prior to their ultimate reception into paradise or condemnation to everlasting fire. Some such idea, maybe, was afloat in the lifetime of Jesus, when the question was asked, "Is this Elias come again?" The Christian and Buddhist conception of soul differs considerably as to position. The one stands isolated. The other is not supposited. The soul, according to the Buddhist, is not a self in itself. Buddhism does not deny the existence of a soul or individuality, but denies the independent existence of a soul or individuality. The Christian conception of the soul corresponds with that of Kapila, the founder of the Sankhya philosophy, insofar as he conceived the soul to be a kind of transcendent, sublimated body, the thinker of our thoughts and the doer of our acts. This dualism was rejected by Gautama. It is necessary to bear in mind, with a view to the proper comprehension of Buddhist teaching in regard to the immortality of the soul, that, although the samskaras, or soul forms, constituting our existence, come to an end as activities in the case of the saint who has extinguished desire, there remains an immortal residuum in the unconditioned elements of soul form which are beyond the reach of death. After death such a saint might be said to have a continued existence, as others have, in the effects shed upon others by his karma during his lifetime. The difference, as I understand it, is this: that, in the case of a saint, the formative element of karma, as it has taken shape in bodily existence, ceases to be from the date of his sainthood. And subsequently the effects of karma, which must continue to be shed on others as impressions as long as he lives, are informative, that is, do not carry with them a desire to live. And, consequently, the saint, from the date of his sainthood, may be said to have no continuing existence in the life of another sentient being. Dr. Paul Carus, in his handy little book, entitled The Dharma, or The Religion of Enlightenment, remarks, Buddhism sheds a new light upon Christian doctrine. Thus the continuity in the evolution of life, which does away with a wrong conception of a separate self, explains and justifies the Christian idea of original sin, or, as it ought to be called, inherited sin. For men inherit not only the curse of their ancestors' sin, but actually consist of the sinful dispositions. Every man is a reincarnation of previous deeds, and represents, for good and for evil, the legitimate continuation. Being. In a Buddhistic sense, in the words of Professor Oldenburg's translator, is the procession regulated by the law of causality, of continuous being at every moment, self-consuming and anew begetting. What is termed a soul being is one individual in the line of this procession, one flame in a sea of flame. So quaintly beautiful is the following dialogue between King Melinda, the Greek King Melinda, and the Saint Nagasena that, notwithstanding its frequent quotation, I venture to reproduce it. The Saint Nagasena says, "It is not the same being, and yet they are separate beings, which relieve one another in the series of existences." Give an illustration, says King Melinda. If a man were to light a light, O great king, would it not burn through the night? Yes, sire. It would burn through the night. How, then, O great king, is the flame in the first watch of the night identical with the flame in the midnight watch? No, sire. And the flame in the midnight watch, is it identical with the flame in the last watch of the night? No, sire. But how then, O great king, was the light in the first watch of the night another, in the midnight watch another, and in the last watch of the night another? No, sire. It has burned all night long, feeding on the same fuel. So, also, O great king, the chain of elements of being, Dharma, completes itself. The one comes, the other goes. Without beginning, without end, the circle completes itself. Therefore it is neither the same being nor another being which presents itself last to the consciousness. A.D. Omar Khayyam says, "We are no other than a moving show of magic shadow shapes that come and go,